You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad and writer who has been living in my 1997 Ford van since January 1st of 2019. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living Podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, as always, and this week's episode was inspired by my new friend, Meg. She just moved into her Ford van. It looks a lot like mine. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw me post a few weeks ago some photos of our vans right next to each other. And, I gotta say, in the last 2.5, almost 3 years of owning my van, I haven't met too many other vanners in vans that look as similar to mine as hers did. It has the windows all the way around. It has the fiberglass high top. Hers is a little bit gold on the outside and mine's a little bit off-white. And the insides are completely different. But it's been really nice and super fun getting to know someone who was building out a van that looked just like mine and was having some really similar issues and stuff. But she inspired the topic for this week's episode before I get too much on a tangent there. And she's brand new into the lifestyle and I'm not, and I've been here for a few years now. And it's interesting. It's always interesting to me to see, the beginner experience all over again. And so she kind of requested an episode on what vanners wish non-vanners or the van curious knew about us as people and about the lifestyle specifically. And so I dug deep and tried to kind of come up with some of the most common and simplest things that I wish people knew about us as vanners and our lifestyle. So that's what we're going to get into today. And before I dive in, I just want to remind everybody that this is an audience-sponsored, audience-supported show. I do not have any brand partnerships or sponsorships. There won't be any annoying ads in the middle of the show. Even in my YouTube version, I disable the mid-roll ads because they annoy the shit out of me, and I imagine they annoy the shit out of other people. So if you like this podcast, and you want to keep supporting this podcast, there are a number of ways you can do that, financially or free, and I'll talk more about those at the end. But just want to thank everybody who has downloaded even a single episode of Deliberate Living, even if this is your first, or if this is your 66th, I think is what we're on, 65 or 66. If you've listened to all of them, thank you so, so much. If this is your first one, thank you so, so much. I got a notification the other day that we just surpassed 6,000 downloads. And, that's not a lot for some people, but that's 6,000 people who have, not people, I guess some of them could be repeats, but that's 6,000 times that this little, fun project that I started has been listened to. And that to me is just wild. So thank you all so much for doing that. And let's keep this moving forward as long as we possibly can. If you have questions that you want me to address on future episodes of Deliberate Living, or if you have specific people you want me to interview, feel free, let me know. I'm always gathering new ideas. Some of them, I come up with on my own, and some of them I solicit from others, and I try to interview people that I think are living deliberately alternative and authentic lifestyles. So if you know more people who fit that bill, let me know. And I'll probably do some more listener Q&A episodes in the future as well. So if you, any questions, any ideas, any feedback, any interviewees you have in mind, send them my way. And so now, to the original topic of this week's episode, what vanners wish non-vanners knew about us and our lifestyles. The first thing, and I think the most common thing, is that yes, we do prefer our vans to your couches or guest rooms or extra spaces. And this one can be a little bit awkward because, nobody likes to turn down an offer from a friend or a family or even a stranger for, a nice cozy place to sleep. But our vans are our homes. And so sleeping in our own bed is generally a lot more comfortable than sleeping in somebody else's bed, even if it's a very close friend or family member, even if it is the most luxurious bed experience ever. Most of the time, sleeping in our own homes, in our own bed, is going to be our preference. And that's not a comment on you. That's not saying that, you're not good enough, or your house isn't good enough, or your couch isn't good enough. It's just that, wouldn't you like to sleep in your own home more often than not? And these are our own homes. We just get to bring them, around with us. So if you really want to offer your van friends or, van strangers something that we are more likely to excitedly take you up on, I would encourage you to try any of the following list. Showers. Almost all vanners are suckers for showers. Or laundry. A place to park where we won't be harassed. So that could be your driveway or your backyard or, the street front in front of your house. That would be fine. I know for me personally, I really like using other people's ovens to make my favorite frozen pizza or maybe a batch of cookies or something because I don't have an oven in my van. Other things that most vanners are generally in need of are places to fill our water tanks or places to empty our water tanks. Places to dump trash or recycling would be awesome. And I know there are some vanners out there who even take it upon themselves to compost. So if you have a place where we can dump our compost, that would be incredible. Another thing that, I think is a really nice gesture is offering like some kind of movie night where we get to, sit on that very nice couch that you're offering for us to sleep on. And, we get to enjoy that space with you and be cozy, somewhere where we can't touch all sides of our house with just outstretched arms, but then, retreating to our vans afterwards. And then most vanners would really appreciate some form of electricity or Wi-Fi so that we can charge all of our devices, especially on rainy or overcast days. And then we can catch up on things and hang out a little bit longer. And obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. Your vanner's preferences may differ, but I have it on pretty good authority that this is a really good starting place for non-vanners who want to offer vanners something to make our lives easier. We won't always take you up on the couch or the guest room, but we will almost always take you up on showers or laundry or, places to dump trash or using your oven or something to that effect. So you can still offer us things if you want to. I know that makes me feel good when I can make somebody else's life easier or give them something that they don't always get or something that's a little bit special. And generally, a bed is not something that I'm going to accept from somebody else. Like, I already have my bed. I already have my house. But if I could park my house in your driveway, that would also be great. So you don't have to not offer vanners anything if you're one of those people who likes to give. Just maybe change your mindset around what you do give. The second really common truth for me is that, yes, we want to show you our rigs. We do. But, pardon the mess, please. I've found that some folks out there, whether known or former strangers, have a lot of curiosity about the interior of my van. They want to see the interior, but sometimes people can be a little bashful about it. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes people are very forthcoming with, oh my gosh, can I see your rig? And sometimes people, I can tell, want to see it, but don't want to ask because they don't want to be awkward. And I just want to let y'all know that the vast majority, although not all, vanners are more than happy to show you our little homes, right? Like, we're so proud of them. We're so happy with them. And we're really happy to share them. And to be clear, often there is a little bit of a mess involved because, just as I'm sure your home, your stationary home, gets a little messy, when you're not expecting company, ours does too. So when I'm expecting guests, I'm more likely to tidy up, organize things a little better, do a little extra sweeping. But if I meet someone out and about, like in the world somewhere, at a gas station, which has definitely happened, or a grocery store, trailhead, etc., I'm probably not having, the cleanest, most organized home I can have because I just got done with a bunch of chores or I'm on my way to do a bunch of chores. So yeah, most of us are happy to share the insides of our homes, but they probably will be a little messy and we might be a little bit embarrassed about it. And yes, we realize that sometimes it feels awkward to look in or stand in and explore someone else's home. And like, I totally understand that my kitchen is my bedroom, is my office, is my bathroom, etc. And so that can be a little bit weird because you can't come over for dinner without coming also into my bedroom, and that can be a little strange. So if you're not comfortable going inside a vanner's home, feel free to stand outside and just, kind of rubberneck around the doors and see what you can, take a little visual tour. But more often than not, vanners are happy to share, so feel free to ask. We love showing them off. And honestly, the worst somebody can say is like, no, it's too messy, or just no. And that's not so bad. The third most common truth for my experience is, yes, you can ask any question you want. And past a certain point, we have heard them all before. And they're not embarrassing to us. They might be embarrassing to you to ask. But feel free to ask whatever the fuck questions you have. We will talk about our systems for our poop, or for how we shower, how long we go between showers, how often we wear clothes before we finally do laundry, where our water comes from, where it goes, yada, yada, yada. So on the one hand, ask whatever you want. We've heard it before. We're more than happy to talk about anything. But be careful what you ask, because you might get more than you bargained for in an answer. And in addition to that, most vanners are happy to talk about the big picture as well as the minute details. A lot of us, have an idea of what our budget for the conversion was and our lifestyle. That's a big question we get. We can talk about the specifics of our build and how we put up our walls and insulation, and we're happy to share our design process and what we love about our build and what we're going to change next time around. So this lifestyle invites a lot of questions and curiosity, but sometimes people are a little shy to share them. Maybe because they don't want to make us feel like we're being interviewed. Maybe because, it's just not polite. But a lot of times vanners are a very helpful bunch, and we like to share what we've been through. We like to share our lifestyles. So feel free to ask. Another thing that I have noticed is very common since being on the road is that, we don't necessarily know every single other vanner in the world. But yes, we're happy to hear about your obscure connection to one on the other side of the globe. More times than I can count, I've encountered a van curious person, like out in the wild, who knows some vanner somewhere, some former vanner somewhere, and asks if I know this specific person. And usually I do not know that person. Partially, this is likely because I am a hermit and I am an introvert and I don't necessarily go out and introduce myself to everybody. And partially, this is because there are simply so many vanners in the world that it's impossible for us to actually know each other. But yeah, if you see somebody out at a trailhead and they're in a van and you have a friend in a van, ask if they know each other, because sometimes they do. Recently, my friend Christine Reed, who's a former guest on the show and also a former vanner, told me a story about how she went on a date with this guy in Denver who, upon finding out that she climbs, used to live in a van, and doesn't shave her armpits, asked if she knew me, that he had, a friend named Holly Priestley who lived in a van, and do we know each other? And I mean, we do. And so that was really funny for a few reasons. One, it seemed to be the not shaving part of the collection of similarities that we have that kind of tipped him off to thinking that we might know each other. And yes, we do actually know each other, but so often when people ask us if we know some other vanner, the answer is no. But we had a pretty good laugh about that one. And yes, sometimes I do know your random vanner friend, so ask about it, but don't expect us to know everybody. The next big truth that I think can be a little bit complicated is that we're not on a trip. This is our lifestyle now. So the first year that I was in my van, I always got this question about, how is my trip going? When is my next trip? Where am I going on this trip? Yada, yada, yada. And, it made sense for me personally at first because I was going on trips and returning to Denver after being gone for usually twice as long as I thought I was going to be gone. And I stayed in the van when I was in Denver, but I kind of had a home base that I returned to, and then I would leave and come back. And so that was fine, but eventually the question got kind of awkward for me, the question about trips, because I stopped seeing my travels as trips. now they were just my life. And, I mean, life is a trip, sure, why not? But the word trip kind of implies that whatever you're doing, whatever you're on, is a short-term thing, and you'll return to normal, air quotes, whatever the fuck that means, before long. And so sometimes we will, right? And sometimes we won't. Some of us drive through our van journeys in like a matter of months, and some of us end up doing this for years or even decades. And so the word trip can become a little bit awkward. And, we know most of us, of course, the royal we, all of us, sort of, we know that you don't mean anything by it, right? Because it's just kind of part of conversation, like, oh, are you going on your next trip, or how is your trip going, or whatever. Most of the time, nobody means anything by it. It's just conversation. And if you want to ask us, where we plan on going next, or if we have any other places we want to visit, you can ask those questions. There are ways to ask it without throwing the word trip in there. For some reason, the word trip seems to minimize the life adventure that we're on. Like, you don't go, I mean, I guess some people go on a trip to the grocery store, but we're just living life, and this is our life. It's not exactly the same as a trip. So that one can be a little bit complicated and a little bit confusing, but I hope that my convoluted way of explaining it helps somebody understand how that might feel to a full-time vanner. And finally, no, we don't often want to share our favorite campsites, our current locations, or our specific future travel plans. This is a question I get a lot because I've done a lot of traveling. Like, pre-van life and in the van, I have done a lot of traveling, and most of it has been camping, and I've seen a lot of cool things, and I know a lot of cool hikes or waterfalls or lakes or whatever, and people always ask me for, my recommendations for things to see, and I'm happy to give them, but not usually my favorite spots or my favorite campsites. So when it comes to finding campsites, there are a lot of resources out there. Just 2 weeks ago, I did a whole podcast on the subject, and I gave a lot of recommendations for beginner campers to find new campsites. So check that out if you haven't already. And since our beginning phase, and since we were using those same resources that I mentioned, so many of us vanners have developed our own systems for finding places to park, whether it's in a city or out in the boonies or somewhere in the middle. And when we find an especially good spot, we don't really want to tell anybody else about it. We don't want to risk that spot being taken if we need it or want it for a night or a weekend or a week or longer. We don't want to risk that really special spot being made public or shared with the wrong people and potentially trashed or closed or, otherwise made unavailable. And so a lot of vanners can be pretty secretive about where we camp. And unless we know that we can trust you with our lives, like literally, we're probably not going to give up our best spots to you. And for many of the same reasons, we don't often share where we currently are most of the time. We don't want to get inundated. We don't want the places that we're at to get too crowded. And a lot of vanners, especially female vanners, don't like to offer up our real-time locations because of safety issues, and also because we're frequently trying to stay incognito wherever we happen to be, and we don't want to bring attention to ourselves or our hideouts or our favorite places. And so I know that I just said in the previous topic about trips that, we're happy to talk about our future plans, and we are, but often we'll speak about them kind of vaguely if they're not like super set in stone. And again, like this is partially because of safety, but it's also like an effort to be honest because our plans change all of the dang time. And like we might have a destination and a timeline in mind, but that can all be altered at like the drop of a hat. It will continue to. And yeah, so sometimes we don't want to share our best campsites. We don't want to tell you where we are, and we don't want to tell you where we're going. And it's not personal to you. It's personal to us. So that's why we don't do it. And so there you have it. A totally non-exhaustive list of all the types of things that vanners wish non-vanners and the van curious among us, our friends, our family, and complete strangers knew about us and our lifestyles. I really hope that this episode has been helpful to those of you who don't van. And even those of you who do van, if you've made it this far, send this out to your network as a quick and easy guide for what to ask and what to expect from us as you continue with your mobile lifestyle. So like I said before at the beginning of the show, this is an audience-supported podcast. And that means that there aren't any ads, and it means that all of your actions help support the podcast. If you want to support the podcast in a financial way and help offset some of the costs that go into its production, I have a PayPal and a Venmo set up. If you want more behind-the-scenes access, you can also join my Patreon. And if you don't have the budget for it right now, that's totally fine. Liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, these are all other excellent ways to make sure that this show gets seen by more people and the right people who need this information and who could really benefit from hearing it. So feel free to share wherever you feel the need and to whoever you feel the need. But seriously, like from the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful for the over 6,000 downloads we've had on this show so far, and I can't wait for the next 6,000. But that about wraps up this week's show. I hope you guys tune in next week for another excellent episode. Bye! We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, on YouTube, or sign up for email updates every time something new is published. I'll see you next time on Deliberate Living, and until then, keep your life on the DL too.